Hello again, welcome to part 4 of this series. In this video I'm going to be mostly dealing with the water. I start hacking at it right away by just adding a few more details and colors to parts that I think will benefit from having a little bit more waves. As you can see, the aqua green kind of that I have on the near side of these waves at the front here is basically a representation of translucency in the water, and it happens mostly when the water gets thinner. And at a wave, on the crest of the wave, it's where it's the most thin, so light can actually shine through it. And that's what I'm trying to achieve here by using that different color. It's not just I want to shade it to make it brighter, to make it look taller, but also I want to show that it's translucent. Here I'm adding the shadow of the boat onto the water. I think I kind of figure out I don't need to go that dark with the watercolor. Also because there's never going to be a pure super dark color on the shadow, because the sky also gets reflected, and the solution is to also have the contrasting color around here on the front of the image. If I add that dark tone to the back of the image, I reduce the effect of atmospheric density. So I basically add a few more bright shades to again simulate the reflections from the clouds and sky on the water, but again also have to figure out that they are still supposed to be in shadow on the image. Most of the work here is I'm not going to say it's guesswork, but a lot of it is avoiding repetition. So there's a lot of dealing with colors that hopefully you don't get on the neighboring parts of the image, so that it doesn't look like a pattern. But at the same time, there's a kind of a logic to shading the volumes. Now, water can be tricky, obviously, because it can be quite reflective, so it might look metallic in some points, but it's also transparent, so you get reflections, you get refractions, you get distorted surface reflections. I mean, it's very complicated. So my suggestion for the approach is to be a bit more impressionistic. Kind of give the impression of water rather than try to photographically mimic it. Here I add a brighter aqua color to really get that sense of warm sunlight, and also because that part of the image lacked something to draw the attention to over there. In this case, this wave is not sort of shaped like the others, and that's why you see a bit more of sunlight reflection and sky reflection rather than the backlit wave effect, which I have here on the left and not so much on that one under the main ship. And the reason for that is, well, one, I didn't want to have all the near waves look like that. And the second, I didn't want to have that near wave distract from the ship by giving it a more interesting color, so to speak. One of the things that I was doing in between sessions of streams was that I was trying to figure out how to properly shade each of these elements. And a lot of that was by researching both photos of the sea and photos of ships in the water, but also paintings of naval battles or of just ship scenes in the ocean. And you can see that in the paintings, they exaggerate the water a lot more. It's a lot more interesting that the water is dramatic. If you see a photo, you'll see that the water is actually a lot flatter for the most part. There's slightly noisy reflections. I mean, sometimes it's almost like a mirror. You have the boat and then you have the perfect reflection of the boat. Sometimes the reflection will be so scattered around by the distortion of the surface of the water that you almost get no reflection at all. So it depends quite a lot on the surface. Here I took the image of the ship and I reflected it by flipping it vertically and also lowering its opacity, and I picked the colors out of that reflection. And now I'm using those colors to add the reflection of the ship kind of by hand in this case as well. Kind of by hand, but in a way that it makes sense. So you're not going to have a reflection on a very bright bit, because the bright bit is not reflecting the ship, it's reflecting the sun or the sky color. So you're going to get most of your reflections on the darker bits. Now, in order to get these clouds to look fluffy or volumetric. I tried adding a darker shade in there and sort of carve in those shadows, and it didn't really work. So what I'm managing here is I'm sorting all the layers so that I can go in and paint shadows on the clouds. I'm doing this very basic lasso tool selection and just flood filling parts of the image in. And alone, they kind of look okay. I mean, I'm fairly happy with the shading. It's just that it doesn't really look that interesting. I mean, I would never think that showing this to someone, they would not say that these are clouds. I mean, they're obviously clouds. They're above. They're, you know, a relatively appreciable shape. They're white and noisy and whatnot. But it almost feels like they almost don't have an impact on the image. I'm having a go here at trying different sky colors, seeing if any of those will improve the look of the image. This here, I think I'm messing around with the photo with color lookup adjustment layer, and I just figure that I really like the color of these sails on the near ship, and so I'm going to be using that color a bit more. Again, from research and from looking at photos, I kind of figured that my sails were a little too white. The faraway ship sails before were a little too dark, but that was because I was, again, trying to get them to be like a pirate ship kind of color, and then slowly realizing that they were looking like clay, and they were also kind of the same hue as the ship, so maybe they looked more like wood, or the ship wasn't looking right. So again, this back and forth is basically me dealing with mistakes and kind of learning from them, which is, I think, almost always positive. This is a before and after of what I had and how much has changed. You can see that the basic skeleton of the image is pretty much the same, except there's a few things that changed. The back boat was kind of floating on top of the water, not really sunken in. So that was it for this session. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and take care. I'll see you later.